It's May 29th, 1453. For 53 brutal days, the ancient walls of Constantinople, the last remnant of a Roman Empire that stood for 1,500 years, have held out against the massive Ottoman army. But now, under the thunder of the largest cannons the world has ever seen, those walls are finally crumbling. For the Emperor Constantine XI, it's the end of a 1,000-year-old legacy. For the 21-year-old Sultan Mehmed II, it's the beginning of a new empire. This isn't just the story of a siege, it's the story of how one city's fall reshaped our world, sparking a new age of art and discovery and forever changing the balance of power between East and West. The fading light. By the mid-15th century, the Byzantine Empire was a ghost of its former self. Once a sprawling power stretching from Italy to Egypt, it had shrunk to little more than the city of Constantinople and a few scattered pieces of land. The once great capital, which may have held a population of nearly 500,000 in its prime, was now home to only about 50,000 people. Its magnificent palaces and forums stood next to vast, empty fields within its own walls, a hollowed-out shell of its former glory. The empire was bankrupt, politically divided, and militarily feeble. It was an empire in name only, a flickering candle in the face of a rising storm. And that storm was the Ottoman Empire. For more than a century, the Ottoman Turks had been expanding relentlessly, conquering huge territories in Anatolia and the Balkans. They had effectively surrounded Constantinople, turning the mighty capital into an isolated Christian island in a rapidly growing Muslim sea. The city's fall wasn't a question of if, but when. The previous Sultan, Mehmed II, had tried to take the city in 1422, but was forced to pull back. His son, Mehmed II, who took the throne in 1451, would not be so easily discouraged. Young, brilliant, and fiercely ambitious, Mehmed was obsessed with a single goal: conquering Constantinople and making it the heart of his own empire. The Sultan's ambition. Mehmed II was a man of fearsome intellect and an iron will. He saw himself as the heir to the Roman Empire and believed that taking its ancient capital was his destiny. The moment he took power, he dedicated everything to this one goal. His preparations were meticulous and terrifying. In 1452, on the European side of the Bosphorus Strait, Mehmed built the massive Rumeli Hisari, or Throat Cutter, castle. Constructed in just a few months, this fortress gave him total control of the strait, allowing him to choke off any potential help for Constantinople from the Black Sea. When a Venetian ship refused to pay the new toll, a single cannon shot sank it, and its crew was executed, a brutal message to all of Christendom. But Mehmed's real ace in the hole was his investment in gunpowder. He hired a Hungarian cannon founder named Urban, who had first offered his services to the Byzantines. Emperor Constantine XI couldn't afford his price. Mehmed II, on the other hand, gave him unlimited resources. The result was a series of enormous cannons, the most famous being the Basilica. This supergun was over 27 feet long and could hurl a 1 Hebrew 200-pound stone ball nearly a mile. It took hundreds of men and dozens of oxen just to move it. This wasn't just a weapon, it was psychological warfare, designed to break not just the walls of Constantinople, but the will of its defenders. The age of medieval castles was about to come to a very violent end. The siege begins. On April 6, 1453, the siege began. Mehmed's army, numbering somewhere between 80,000 and 160,000 men, completely dwarfed the city's defenders. Emperor Constantine XI had managed to scrape together only about 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers, a mix of his own troops and foreign volunteers, mostly from Genoa and Venice. This tiny force had to defend 14 miles of the legendary Theodosian walls, a triple-layered defense that had stopped every attacker for 1,000 years. Then the Ottoman cannons opened fire, and the ground itself shook. Day after day, the basilica and its brothers pounded the ancient stones, their roar terrifying the city's people. As one defender remembered, the very air seemed to split apart. The defenders worked tirelessly, repairing the damage each night under the brilliant command of a Genoese soldier of fortune, Giovanni Giustiniani Longo. For weeks, the walls held. Mehmed knew a land assault was only half the battle. He had to control the sea. His fleet blockaded the city, but a massive chain blocked the entrance to the Golden Horn, Constantinople's vital harbor. In a stroke of what can only be described as tactical genius, Mehmed ordered his ships to be dragged overland on greased logs around the enemy colony of Galata and into the harbor. On April 22nd, the Byzantines woke up to the horrifying sight of Ottoman warships in their supposedly safe waters. This forced them to stretch their already thin defenses even further. Still, the defenders fought on with ferocious courage, beating back several massive assaults. But as May dragged on, supplies ran low, and sheer exhaustion set in. The constant bombardment had punched holes in the walls, and the end felt near. The final assault. In the last days of May, a Venetian ship that had slipped out to find a promised relief fleet returned. The news was devastating. No one was coming. Christendom had abandoned them. On hearing this, Emperor Constantine reportedly wept, but his resolve didn't crack. He gathered his commanders, reminding them they were fighting for their faith, their families, and their homes. He then went to the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia one last time, taking communion and asking forgiveness from everyone present. Just before dawn on May 29, 1453, Mehmed launched his final all-out assault. The thunder of cannons was now joined by the scream of trumpets and the roar of tens of thousands of soldiers. The first wave of irregulars was beaten back. The second wave of Anatolian troops was also repulsed, but the attacks were relentless, designed to wear down the exhausted defenders. Finally, Mehmed unleashed his elite Janissaries. In the chaos of the fight, a small gate, the Kirker Porta, was apparently left unbolted. A group of Ottomans poured in and raised their flag on a nearby tower. At that exact moment, the commander Giustiniani was mortally wounded. Seeing him carried away caused a panic among the defenders, and the Ottoman tide surged through the main breaches in the walls. Emperor Constantine XI, throwing off his imperial purple robes, led one last, desperate charge into the chaos. He was never seen again, the last Roman emperor dying as a common soldier in defense of his city. A new world. What followed was a brutal 3-day sack of the city, as was the custom of the time. Countless treasures were lost forever, and thousands of citizens were killed or enslaved. When Sultan Mehmed II made his triumphant entry, the story goes that he was saddened by the devastation, saying, "What a city we have given over to plunder and destruction." He immediately ordered an end to the looting and declared the magnificent Hagia Sophia a mosque. He moved his capital from Edirne to the newly conquered city, which would soon be known as Istanbul, and began repopulating it with people from all over his new empire. Mehmed no longer saw himself as just a sultan. He was now Kaiser-i Rum, Caesar of Rome, the rightful heir to the very empire he had just destroyed. The impact was immediate. The Byzantine Empire, which had been a Christian buffer between Europe and the East for centuries, was gone. The Ottoman Empire was now the undisputed power in the Eastern Mediterranean, and its push into Europe could continue almost unopposed. But the consequences of this one event would ripple far beyond the battlefield, reaching the shores of Western Europe and eventually the Americas. The fall of Constantinople wasn't just the end of an empire, it was the catalyst for a new global era. The echoes of 1453. We often hear that a single event changed the world. In the case of Constantinople's fall, it's actually true. The most immediate effect was on the world of ideas. In the years before and after the fall, a wave of Byzantine scholars and thinkers fled west, especially to Italy. They brought with them a treasure that had been preserved in Byzantine libraries for 1,000 years. Priceless Greek manuscripts of Plato, Aristotle, and other giants of the classical age. This sudden flood of knowledge didn't start the Renaissance, it was already underway, but it threw gasoline on the fire, supercharging Western art, science, and philosophy. The economic impact was just as transformative. With the Ottoman Empire now controlling the key trade crossroads between Europe and Asia, the old overland routes for spices, silk, and other luxuries became far more expensive and unreliable. This forced European nations to look for another way to get to the east. Visionary leaders in countries like Portugal and Spain, now facing an Ottoman-dominated Mediterranean, turned their gaze to the open ocean. They began funding ambitious voyages down the coast of Africa and eventually west across the Atlantic. The search for a new route to India, sparked by the closure of the old one at Constantinople, would lead directly to Europe's age of discovery and the accidental arrival in the Americas. So, the thunder of Mehmed's cannons in 1453 did more than just knock down the walls of a city. It shattered the medieval world, cleared the way for an Ottoman Golden Age, helped ignite the cultural rebirth of Europe, and pushed explorers out onto the vast, unknown oceans, creating the interconnected world we live in today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a pivotal moment in history, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next documentary. Let us know in the comments which historical turning point you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching.